YouTube and streaming on Play Chess. So I thought this week we could actually carry on looking at the British Chess Championship. There were some technical issues as well at the end of last week, which I'm unfortunate. There's a very interesting game I was wanting to go over of the eventual winner, Jonathan Hawkins against Alistair Hill in round 7. I thought perhaps we could touch on that again. It was actually quite a cute little game, and then go on to some other players as well that came joint second. So, you know, there's a feast of games, and it seems to be such a major event of the British British calendar year in chess. You know, maybe deserves more than one broadcast session before going on to the Fischer-Spassky match, carrying on that. So okay, do you see, is there a board? It seems is there a board, or is it black on? It seems that there's no board on my preview here as far as YouTube is concerned, which doesn't seem very promising. Do you see a board? The visuals okay? Interesting. Or not yet. I don't see. Yeah. So I put that on mute. Okay, let's see. It's just, wow. Is there a 20-second, 30-second delay? The board is up? Oh, I just can't see it on the preview. Oh, fantastic. Okay, Jonathan Hawkins. If I reload here, does that do the trick for me? Yes, thankfully it does the trick for me. Okay. So Jonathan Hawkins against Alistair Hill. Yes, I was trying to go over this last week. D4 from Jonathan. Knight F6. Jonathan, not Fon, by the way. I got corrected on spelling on YouTube. So Jonathan Hawkins. Okay, so C4 G6. We have Nxd4 Grunfeld D5. And Jonathan Hawkins played Knight F3 here. So actually, I think the usual move is C takes D. Let's connect to the live book. That's actually by far the most popular against the Grunfeld. So Knight F3 is the second most popular in live book. Kind of keeping that tension, not letting black. Seemingly to me, it has a good time in the Grunfeld when they fracture the pawns. You get this kind of fractured pawns, and D4 is going to be hit hard. And to be honest, I don't really like the look of the Grunfeld with white. It's been my personal bias. I've always felt more cozy. I shouldn't probably say this for people preparing against me, against King's Indian defences. I've always thought the King's Indian with white is more fun than the Grunfeld. But anyway, so Knight F3 is an interesting waiting move. We see Bishop G7, and here, okay, a very unusual move was played H4, which makes this an interesting game from an anti-Grunfeld perspective. This is the sort of move that you want to throw out to sort of make the opponents improvise in the opening. And I have actually played this in Blitz recently, but probably in the wrong way, just for the straightforward idea of sacking an exchange, which is probably in many cases totally unsound. The way it was played here, this H4, is very positional, very sound, which suits the time format really. You know, a whole day for this game. So H4 is not just like a hack attack to sacrifice the exchange later. So we see here C6. So black actually is encouraged just to reinforce that D5 pawn, and of course has created some extra dark square weaknesses, right? Something to bear in mind. Subtly creates some extra dark square weaknesses. So it's losing a bit of the Grunfeld flavour. That the white centre is pretty secure here, and there's some uncertainty of white's intention here. Is it to play H5? Well, you know, how relevant this pawn be, right? So we see bishop g5 offering this pawn there. It seems like a real gambit to take this pawn with the possibility of holding on to it now. So it's already a kind of strange gambit position. Black did actually take this, and we have e4 b5, very, very different from a standard Grunfeld flavor. So we have e5 gaining space, knight d5, and this drives the knight away from h5. So now actually this move h5 is interesting, and actually there was a similar sort of plan and ambiguity about either opening the file or part of some square strategy occurred in a game in the US Championships with Nakamura playing black recently. He played something like h5. Actually, I'm not entirely sure that was a US Championship game. No, it might be in some other tournament. He was black and he played like h4, but it wasn't for hg, it was for h3 with a light square attack as black. But here the option of h6 can be part of a dark square attack, but so h6 is an interesting option. It seems you don't want to close up lines if you want to attack the king, but it's the positional option. Plan A, plan B, attack the king, but the king might never castle, well, not for a while. Or plan B is the positional consideration that you want to like dig into the dark squares. They've already been subtly weakened. The dark squares have been subtly weakened already, but if you get a pawn on h6, it's like some extra dark square pressure is being exerted on black. We see black playing bishop g4. Okay, it gets a bit out. It doesn't commit to castling, and now we do see this h6. So it's the start of a dark square attack really. And you'll notice here this pawn's pinned tactically. It's technically pinned. So if only something like knight e4 to d6 to arrange that might be quite interesting, or another knight d6. This is quite a pin at the moment. Of course, black is liable to break out with a forcing move with tempo to watch out for f6 at any point. We see here bishop e2. Let's put on a Qe6 actually as well. If this is distracting, I'll turn it off, but it's usually pretty good. I don't want it to distract too much from the general considerations. Black played knight d7, and now we do see a knight trying to get into d6 here. Not with knight e4, but more subtly knight d2. This does facilitate something like this. Probably knight e4 immediately. Maybe black's got some resource like f6 is, and actually this could immediately be in black's favor. Apparently, it seems technically black's going to be doing great here. For example, this, and then what happens? The knight's repulsed back. That's no good. This is actually a terrible position for white, it seems. So no, care has got to be taken about this f6 move being available. So we see knight d2. White uses forcing moves against black. So what to do about this bishop now? We see the bishop actually going back to e6 here. I think on taking, let's have a look on taking. This might actually be plausible. It seems small advantage for white, engine indicates. It seems a plausible possibility. But black actually, also bishop f5, black actually went to e6, which might not have been the best. Now bishop g4 is a bit alarming. The tactical concept behind it is really, really cool. I mean, super cool. Black played bishop takes g4, queen takes g4, as if f6 is possible here. But little nuances of the position, earlier moves which might have been brilliant and resourceful, can fall flat on their faces in these new kind of positions. And here with the queen on g4 after f6, I don't know how many of you were around last week, but guess what white played here? White to play, if I give you 20 seconds, white to play. What does white play here? Yes, it's the Kingscrusher radio show, by the way. Yes, I didn't put it in the shop. Kingscrusher radio show, usually Tuesdays 9 o'clock. The title, okay, didn't have that at the moment. I could change that later. So what does white play here? Does anyone remember from last week? There were some horrendous internet problems last week. I don't know if any of you had the patience. I was losing it after. White's play here. What does white play? Anyone? Yeah, it was an amazing move. Queen E6 was played. Probably little option actually as well. If white wants an advantage, something like this runs into a forcing move F5. This position isn't so hot. Black's a pawn up. Black's got a nice knight on D5. Black's going to be a tough nut to crack here. So this though can make the game much briefer. This kind of tactical, amazing concept. And so, well, the reason is, so black played Queen B6. If F takes G, then this is really quite dangerous now for Knight D6 checkmate, like the famous Arakel trap where you get Knight D6 checkmate in a Arakel trap, which is quite well known. So Knight D6 checkmate threatened, and what does black do here? This would be problematic. If Queen B8, take here, and then actually we can take here, which is apparently stronger than anything else. This position is horrendous for black. It just gets pretty nasty. Also, actually, Knight D6 is good as well. Just win the rook. That'll be clear enough. So yeah, there's not too many options after Queen E6 which work out very well. On Knight C7, Queen takes, and this position, and this is getting complicated. This position apparently is okay for white. It's more than okay for white. Okay, so yeah, black didn't want to take on G5 anyway, to cut a long story short. Sorry, black didn't want to do that. Black played Queen B6. Okay, so Queen B6, and we have now the very strong E takes F6. After knight takes F6, so white hasn't sacked a piece. Bishop takes F6, knight takes. The king's kind of stranded here. This queen sitting over the options to castle on the queen side or the king side. It's an unfortunate position with still this knight E4 coming in. The queen is also trying to protect C6 here, so this queen's really in a fantastic position in the heart of black's position here. So we see knight D4 immediately threatening knight takes, well, mate in 2 like that, as well as knight D6, mate in 2 up with queen D7. So black took, knight takes, and here it's really fantastic coordination of these two pieces. If queen takes, then there's time to play rook D1 here. There's no checks, and then knight D6 will follow, or knight F6. If the black queen's well, yeah, knight F6 is mate here, checkmate. So yeah, the queen can't take on D4. Well, there's also C6. Yeah, so king D8, and now the forcing move knight C5 threatening mate, and now the final really crushing but simple move played is D5, which opens up this D file, and there's nothing really black can do defensively. In fact, black is in a really awkward position where he hasn't actually managed to succeed in connecting rooks. And the unfortunate bishop, you know, I wish I had a game like this one day. So yeah, it's fantastic attacking game. He made it look easy. It's embarrassing, isn't it? It's embarrassing if you were black. Unfortunately, yeah, you didn't manage to connect rooks or get your bishop out. Getting the bits out is unfortunate if you can't manage it. You get blasted instead. So here in the final position, if C takes, you know, queen takes, we're on the rook, and yes, we can carnage ensues. Carnage. We can then coordinate with 3 pieces attacking and go for knight e6 soon. So yeah, it's devastation. Yeah, it's an interesting game because, well, at one level it's also an interesting game just from an opening theory perspective, because if we looked at this game, you know, if someone had got, you know, spent all the time, you know, getting the books on the Grunfeld, because there are books on the Grunfeld, studying them, and then someone on move 5 here, well, on move 4 they play knight f3, and on move 5 annoyingly they play h4 in live book, you know, how many moves down is this? It's like, this is like 4, 5, 6, 7th most popular move. So the guy that came British Championship this year, British champion, uses the 7th most popular move. But historically, this has happened loads of years. Julian Hodgson, he wins the British Championship 3 times. Does he play mainline theory? No. Trompovsky, he did some book on Trompovsky. He made it into a massive weapon of choice. The combinatory explosion of chess. People reassure themselves, they get these books on openings. Who are the people that win tournaments? Have a look at the people who win tournaments. They go outside of the norm. They get their opponents to improvise. This is what happened in this game. You know, the opponent was taken on their own territory, and they didn't even manage to connect rooks. It can be that embarrassing. Look at the games of Julian Hodgson when he won the British Championship. He had enormously crushing games outside of the scale of normal trodden paths. So crushing because people were improvising so incredibly badly. He was getting winning positions within 15 moves, Julian Hodgson. So it happens this year. This is a fantastic way of playing against the Grunfeld. I can't wait to try this out myself. All those Grunfeld players with tons of opening theory. A fantastic message is sent by this game. So anyway, let's look at another game now. Okay, so the crunch game he had to win in the very last round to avoid a tiebreak against another Grandmaster, Keith Arkell, very, very solid GM. And he does a little bit of a preparation trick because he's known as a D4 player. So let's have a look at that. Fascinating. He almost like does a Fischer. He changes his first move. Fischer changed his first move quite a bit in the 1972 match. He changes his first move. Jonathan Hawkins is a D4 player, apparently. I can verify that with chessgames.com. I'll give you the exact stats. Hold on a sec. I'll give you the exact stats. How many times has he played D4? How many times has he played E4? With the white pieces on chessgames.com, 81 games with D4, 13 with knight f3, and only 8 with E4. So poor Keith Arkell, probably studying like mad for D4, and then E4 is played. So Keith Arkell, I don't know why I'm saying it like that, Keith Arkell. So he plays the Sicilian defence, which is very sporting because it's like a fighting, exciting opening. So is Jonathan Hawkins going to turn into some sort of Mikhail Tal here? He's known as a positional player. So there's some curiosity already. You know, what is this? Jonathan Hawkins playing E4. Does he play like Tal? Really? Okay, let's see. This is a Sicilian defence now. Knight f3, e6. Okay, we have an open Sicilian. None of this messing around with all this anti-Sicilian c3 rubbish. No, we have an open Sicilian. Okay. So Keith Arkell usually plays the dullest openings known to mankind. The equivalent of Vogon poetry. Keith Arkell, I think, you know, would like to bore you to death and win an endgame because he's known as an endgame specialist. You know, his hero might be, you know, Smyslov, probably. So anyway, so Arkell is playing the Sicilian defence. What on earth has gone wrong? Both players have transformed into different creatures just for this round 11 game. So we see knight c6, knight c3. The variation we have is Sicilian timing off. So after Mark timing off, queen c7, f4, a6. White plays knight takes c6, queen takes c6. Okay, black hasn't developed too many pieces. What black has created is kind of like as though he's playing drafts. I don't know if you've played drafts, it's quite a fun game. So there's a lot of dark square weaknesses here. So, you know, like a stone wall, one way to destroy the stone wall, you often want to exchange off the defensive bishop of the dark squares, right? So we're going to look out for that from an instructive point of view. Getting rid of the f8 bishop. It's a defender of the dark squares here. Okay, so we see bishop d3. And black doesn't develop the king side yet. Black plays b5. Is white bothered about b4? Enough to play a3? Not particularly here. White keeps his options opened. Keeps his options open for castling either kingside or queenside by playing queen e2. This is a quick look at castling though. b4 might be an issue for knight f6, and then I think this was the notes. This position might offer black some interesting counterplay, and yeah, this is actually a variation that I'd seen from another report actually. To be honest, that there's a subtlety about white not castling, because here black might get a very aggressive position. You see all this from one little finesse of castling or not. Is it really? It's unbelievable to think that queen e2 might actually be so much stronger than committing to castling. But castling is a very committal move, and it looks as though black was in no hurry, right, to develop the king side. So the idea of fianchettoing here and using this h rook is all designed against white committing, you know, to castling, right? So okay, we see here queen e2, and now bishop b7, and now again bishop d2, keeping things flexible. You know, will he be casting on the queen side or the king side? Bishop e7. Because here I think if black, there's no point trying to play b4 here, because actually there's a very powerful move available in this position. Give you a clue. What can white actually play here against b4? Have you noticed? White play here. What does white have in this position? Which actually means b4 is almost like it's not a great move. What does white play in this position if I give you 20 seconds? Yeah, white can use knight d5 in this position. This is like immune because of the check, right? Winning the queen. And I don't know what black actually does here. Bishop c5. Maybe castling here. It's nice. Knight e7. Knight takes b4. It's possible, it seems. So yeah, that sort of thing dissuades b4 here. So we see bishop e7. The power of cherry coke. Okay, so bishop e7. Cherry Pepsi, pardon me. So a3 now is played to stop b4. Rook b8. White castles. Finally. So this little thing now where I don't think white needs to be worried about some sort of hack attack. Knight f6. e5 was played. Knight d5. And now f5. This seems quite dangerous, this f5. It also, queen g4 might be nice, hitting g7 if black's not careful, but also knight e4. Okay, we see knight takes c3, extinguishing that knight, but bishop takes c3, and actually there's another purpose. a3 is very useful for this dark square bishop exchange. Black might have already gone slightly wrong in rook b8. Some commentators have thought that rook b8 from black might not have been a brilliant thing. We see black further weakening the dark squares here, but what is he to do? If he castles, he just goes straight into a ready-made attack with f6. This seems extremely dangerous. Have a quick look. This position, can black actually defend? Hold on. Maybe. This position here, I would say, is slightly dangerous looking, at least, like dangerous looking, because the rooks, unless black's organising double rooks. Okay, let's take this further. Hold on a sec. Can black do this? There's rook h4. What's the actual threat? Say here, queen h5, and if here, queen takes is mating. So yeah, black's g-file activity doesn't mean his king is unsafe. Okay, it's just an example anyway. I went too far there, but can black castle was an interesting question. Black played g6, okay, which seems intuitively just to weaken the dark squares a bit more. So the next idea, f takes, d takes, and now bishop b4, just to trade off the dark square defender. Black took, and now castled. And technically, from an engine point of view, actually, white doesn't seem to have much of an advantage at all. Actually, it's 0.2 or something. Above 0.5 might be a small advantage, but here it's nothing, it seems. So whatever I've said about black's dark squares and exchanging it off, it seems, technically at least, black's still in good shape here at this moment. We see rook f4, but it seems as though it's slightly easier for white to play this, to put more pressure on f7, just simply double the rooks. Whilst black's rooks are more passive here, right? We see rook bd8, queen f2, and now we see queen c7. Okay, looking to take that, that's protected, and more pressure put on the pawn, and it also facilitates doubling rooks. Now here is maybe the slight panic after queen coming up, rather, queen e3, so strengthening e5, and perhaps black can keep the queen there. I'm not sure what the immediate threat is, but black moved the queen to e7, and we see rook g4, and it looks as though here is the panic move. So like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, don't panic, but here is the panic move. Now panic is probably not, it's probably not a great saying to say don't panic, and I've questioned this over the years. Should you really say to yourself don't panic? Because the word panic induces panic. You shouldn't really say that. Instead, you see these very popular slogans on Facebook. Just keep calm, play chess actually is one for chess. Keep calm, do something else. Keep calm. That's a better way of saying the same thing without using the word panic. But here it seems black exacerbated any issues in the position, because technically from an engine point of view, the engine's saying white's got virtually zero advantage. From a technical, clinical, scientific point of view, white's got very little advantage apparently, except if black panics here, and unfortunately he did, because it seems as though white might be gearing up maybe for something like this or this. This looks too slow with the pawn. Probably quicker queen h6 to block the h pawn, and then rook h4 to just try and make black. But there's a defensive idea that exists in this position. Black actually played h5, which I believe is the panic move. Technically, if black was a computer, black could play rook fd8 here and not be terrified of queen h6, because, and I'm going to test you on this, why shouldn't black be terrified of rook h4 here? Can you see what defensive resource black has in this position? So black to play, what would you play in this position? Actually, I've given you half the defense with rook, the rook to d8. So black to play here, how is rook h4 parried? Which actually gives black an advantage technically as well. Black to play, what could he do here in the ideal world? If he had this position. If he hadn't moved the h pawn. Anyone? Hello? Oh dear, what's the stream delay? Okay. Not f5, come on guys, you don't want to cause structural issues as well. Just e takes f6 is actually crushing here. Bishop takes an end of game. Because, you know, you're going to be losing the queen, it's mash devastation. No, not f5. But it seems as though queen f8 is plausible, by the way, as well. But no, really, as much stronger move is rook. If this position had occurred with rook fd8, it supports this, yes. So here, rook d4, which stops that. And black apparently would be better here. So say takes, black's got that central control. All of a sudden, these four central squares and hitting b4, hitting b4 twice actually, and you can't play c3. So what does white do? What, this? He loses a pawn. So black ends up being better. So yeah, that would completely rule out the queen h6 idea. It seems just black playing rook fd8 actually indirectly defends the old king here very, very well because of rook d4. If the queen, you get this weakness of the last move, it's not on d4. These things are hard to spot though. So anyway, instead, the panic move h5 was played. And we have rook f4 now. And okay, let's have a quick look at queen g5. This brings to mind trying to pin white. Does that actually work? Maybe it can just be kicked actually to h6. And this is okay for white. No, so queen g5 looks interesting for a moment. It's actually the second choice engine move. But here, black played rook fd8 here. Very different position here to play rook fd8. Because now rook ef1. Threatening rook takes f7. That would be nice to rip open black's king. Two rooks for the queen is great here with that pawn. And what does black do now? He could be under severe pressure now. He plays actually queen g5 here. If black plays rook f8, can you see what white can do? White to crush here. What does white do in this position? So if you're white here, what would you do? Yeah, bishop takes g6. Ouch. Pressure on f8 here. So yeah, black can't do that. What can he do here? as I say, it was easier, even though technically it was about, okay, it was easier, it seems, for white to arrange his rooks. And this is unfortunate now. So Queen G5 was played, apparently. But now trebling move, Queen F2, which also defends against the mate threat. Black is actually threatening. Sorry, Rook takes D3 and Queen takes G2 mate. So we see Queen F2. And now Rook takes F7 is renewed as a threat. We see Rook D4 as though it's tying down the Queen to G2. But Black actually resigned after this move. If he played Rook here, then H4 Queen E7 is annoying actually, because there's actually Rook takes F7 on the cards again, or even I'm not sure Rook takes F7 here. No, that's just winning the Rook. No, Queen G3 for two rooks for a queen. And this is better for white. This position, there's too much pressure on the structure, which has been weakened by this H5, right? But yeah, in the game we see this horrific blunder, but it seems to be a lost position anyway. So in this position, it seems to be pretty diabolical if Black played this, yeah, because of H4. H4 Queen here, you might ask. Rook takes F7 is the trebling effect. And if the Queen goes back here, then we've got this powerful move Queen G3 threatening Rook takes F7, and we've got this Rook F6 coming in, and we've got this focal point on G6. It's horrible. Also, I'm not really sure, there's no check even because the pawn on there. So yeah, Black here immediately kind of lost the game with Rook D4. Now can you see, because it looks as though White's tied down to G2, so there were no more moves after this. Black played this move and resigned. So why? Well, Rook takes D4. I think I might as well show you. Rook takes D4 would force, right? Would force Rook takes D4. And now we don't play Queen takes D4, which allows a mate. That would be a mistake. No, Queen takes F7 is just mating back. We don't even bother taking the bishop, even though that's good. We can actually mate Black with the check. So yeah, Rook D4 was an unfortunate move, but in a very bad position. So that ended the game quickly and let Jonathan Hawkins win the British Championship without needing a tiebreak by half a point. So there were 3 people trailing him in the end by half a point, including last year's tiebreak winner, Howell, David Howell. So yeah, ended there. Move 26, Rook D4, Black resigned. So I think the big thing to learn from this is, if you don't want to panic, first of all, don't say don't panic. I think that's overrated. Probably keep calm, play a scientific move. Might be better. Keep calm, play a good move. Keep calm, do this. Keep calm, do that. Is probably better than using the word panic, because otherwise you'll induce panic. Just simply calmly doubling the rooks, calmly having defensive resources available, calmly exploiting weaknesses of the last move. You don't have to be mated in chess. You just need to use calm, logical moves, ideally without moving your pawns, creating weaknesses. You can't move pawns backwards. That makes it worse. So yeah, that game won the British Championship basically. It wasn't exactly a Tau like sacrificial masterpiece, but yeah, it was kind of a brief Sicilian defence game, probably rivaling the short Mikhail Tau games against the Sicilian. So anyway, let's have a look at some of the other GMs, because I thought some of the other GM games were pretty fascinating in the British Championship. Of those trailing him, by half a point. So the three GMs in question, Nicholas Pert, David Howell, Daniel Gormally, they all played some very, very interesting games. So let's have a look at one or two from each, even if this takes ages, because we're celebrating my internet not collapsing so far, so we can carry on for a bit. So Nicholas Pert, I got to play him in last year's London Classic Super Rapid. He absolutely murdered me without any counterplay. Actually, I chatted to him later. He says he's going to be on YouTube. Unfortunately, I didn't write the game down. I could have tried reconstructing it from memory, but it was brutal. It was absolutely brutal. He did this very sharp bishop a3 early on, created these fully protected connected pass pawns on the queen side. I literally had no chance, and this was in a rapid game. Anyway, later he said he was playing Vichy Anand, and it looked as though Anand had played the move so quickly it must have been a mistake, and it turned out that it wasn't a mistake at all. Maybe it wasn't even an intentional trap, but it ended up being a kind of virtual trap, and he lost to Vichy Anand. It was an amazing tournament, this super rapid last December. So I got to play Nicholas Pert in it, who's the stronger of the two brothers, Richard Pert, who I've also played in a previous British Championship. But Nicholas Pert is higher rated technically on FIDE. So let's have a look at some of his games. Now, I'm not going to look at the draws, because quite often draws are really boring, right? And I don't want to look at any games particularly over 50 moves, because that's also really boring. But there was a game against Hebden which was 28 moves. Let's have a look at that to start off with. So against Hebden, this wasn't a sacrificial towel style masterpiece, but let's have a look at it anyway. So it was in round 6. Okay, so round 6, Nicholas Pert against Mark Hebden. So d4, Hebden plays knight f6, as though there's going to be a king's engine defense, but white hasn't committed the c-pawn, right? So we get more of a kind of Perk fianchetto system. d6, knight c3, knight c3. He's not going to play c4 now, funny enough. Knight bd7. So what is this exactly? It's kind of chess-based classification, or is it anti-King's Engine systems? Okay. Yes, because Hebden is a kind of King's Engine player. So yes, maybe he was looking around and the Google search for anti-King's Engine systems and came up with this. Okay, so a4 now, c6, e4. And yeah, black is not going to have a fantastically attacking game here, like you sometimes do in the King's Engine defense. Black, though, is, I think, trying to make a strong point out of e5, the e5 square. So this next move looks at e5 as though black's going to play e5 later. We see b3. And it's as though this is designed against e5, because this diagonal might be more sensitive, because white would always have the option of taking in bishop a3. You get that in some lines of other openings, this annoying bishop a3 possibility, hitting that rook with tempo. So rook e8, but black seems to be intent on going for e5 anyway. Bishop a3. Now here we see bishop f8, which is saying kind of that black might not mind the exchange of the dark square bishops. The thing is, in the King's Engine defense with the pawn on c4, the d4 square is of extra significance as an Achilles heel, because if a piece arrives on d4 later, you can kick it. You can't kick it with your c pawn or your e pawn. But here the c pawn is on c2, right? So does black really want to exchange off dark square bishops and try and put a piece later on d4? Maybe this sort of mechanism to try and weaken d4. Is that really in black's best positional interests. And this game is showing the pros and cons of such an approach. We see rook e1, e5, and white plays not d5 here. I think this is okay for black. It seems c takes, and we're hitting here. Knight takes. I think black wouldn't have too many problems necessarily here, but we see this d takes e5, and we get this exchange of the dark square bishops. If black plays knight takes e5, then white doesn't have to do that. He can play this with the option of f4, and we have this backward pawn to torture, right? So yeah, black doesn't want to be left with a backward pawn subject to torture. So d takes e5, we get the exchange of the dark square bishops. Knight takes f8, as though, you know, there's a possibility of a knight plonking itself on d4, and if only if the defensive knight was removed as well. Wouldn't this be so fantastically amazing to get a knight to d4? There's a slight downside here in giving up the light square bishop. You know, is white's light square bishop going to be a prisoner in that structure or not? And white hasn't played the c pawn up yet to c4. You know, the ability to kick or handle something on d4 at the moment is that a problem? Well, if white felt that the bishop g4 takes f3 idea was such a problem, he might have considered h3 here. I don't think this is another target for black. Knight e6. You know, maybe that's okay for black. You know, he didn't bother with that. He played a5, getting a bit of a grip on the queen side, and we do see this bishop g4. It's a committal decision in some respects. And then we see h3, a tempo gainer first for deciding what to do with the bishop. And to be honest, actually, the engine has bishop takes f3 as an advantage for black. It does weaken white's d4 control, and it was played actually. Bishop takes f3, queen takes f3. It's hitting f6. Can't play this yet because f6, small issue. So knight 6 to d7, but this is the plan. Get a knight to d4. We see bishop f1, but white's light square bishop seems actually pretty poxy at the moment in this structure. We see knight e6. It looks as though black has solved positional problems quite well, and although the pawn is not on c4, isn't this a great thing, this knight coming to d4? Who do you think stands better? So who stands better, white or black? If I asked you here, who stands better in this position? You say white. Someone says white. Any other votes? The engine actually thinks, even though white's got that light square bishop, I mean, it looks as though the bishop's not doing anything. The engine actually thinks black's doing great here, even more than half a pawn advantage. And is actually suggesting odd moves like rook a2 and queen e3. In the game, knight e2 was played. And for some reason, king g7 is suggested. Maybe, the idea of knight f6? Maybe? putting pressure on e4. Maybe that facilitates knight f6. But this is another interesting move. Queen d6. And we see queen e3. Is that pawn on? Maybe queen c5. Rook ed1. And now we see knight f6 putting pressure on e4. Queen takes. Knight takes. And white's forced to play a move to defend the e4 pawn. Yeah, black technically has done more than equalise here. Knight a6 now. Knight b4 is a nuisance. We see king f2, king f8, knight g1, and it looks tempting to play knight b4. It was played knight b4, c3. Yeah, okay. So black now took on d1. Rook takes d1. There is a big problem with this position here. That if the knight, it seems as though this would be a big problem. Knight a6. If knight a6, this wasn't played. That white has the option of taking out the knights, damaging the pawn structure, and maybe something like this looks attractive. Here, rook takes, there's king e7 though. So it looks as though knight a6 is almost plausible tactically, actually, because if this is available defensively, but this position does look a little bit better for white structurally in any case. But unfortunately the knight, the other option for the knight seems to be knight c2 here. As if here, then there's knight a3, the knight's escaping. But unfortunately, in this position, knight a2 was played. And this isn't so hot. Yes, a knight on the rim is dim, they say. So the rim, right? But this is an intersection of two kind of rims, right? So a knight here is almost getting completely stupid. A knight here, or these are the most stupid locations for knights. But a2 is like second most stupid, as is here and here, right? So the knight's gone to a2 and it's only got 2 squares. Yeah? 3 squares, pardon me. Let's try and count. 3 squares there, right? So guess what white plays in this position, which ends the game? Yeah, white play. Yeah. Okay, I shouldn't have shown you this game, but white's play. Yes, maybe it wasn't the most. It wasn't. Knight a2 might not have been the strongest Grandmaster Knight move in history of Grandmaster Knight moves, because of, yeah, guess. Because of what? What is white playing here? Yeah, not rook d1. I think this lets black play knight c1 with advantage. No, but knight e2 unfortunately leaves the knight stranded over there. Yeah, okay. You don't get knight moves like this in the Russian Championship, do you? The Russian All-Play All Championship. But yeah, I find games in the British Championship more fun generally than looking at games in the Russian All-Play All Championship. For me personally, I don't know what it is. I just find them more fun. You get horrific blunders and stuff, and blunders make the fun of it sometimes. So yeah, knight e2. Yeah. Now Okay, so black had to resign the knight stranded. Okay, that's unfortunate. It really is. But yeah, this was in round 6. Mark Hebden later redeemed himself fantastically to draw against David Howell in the final round with a fantastically resourceful endgame. So yeah, this was a bit of a blunder, I think. So actually, just to recap though, I was harping on about the d4 square. It was parried here. So if knight d4, yeah, knight takes, this might be okay. In any case, knight d4 might have been an okay move, it seems. The engine likes black here. This might have been okay. Just to have a pawn there. Even though white's got the light square bishop, this is okay for black, it seems. Actually, I wonder why that's not mentioned as a move, knight d4. Queen d6, king g7. Is knight d4 so bad? I wonder. Oh, it's not even mentioned. It's not mentioned. What's going on about that plan? It's not even mentioned here as a move, just because of knight e2. Everything else under the sun seems to be mentioned for black here. So the engine in this position mentions king g7, h5, a6, h6, knight here, queen d6, knight here, I said that one, c5, king h8, king f8, or queen b8. Yeah, maybe it's too committal. Engines don't like committing pawns. Doesn't like the idea of knight d4 here after knight e2. Anyway, so because I thought that was the general plan, gist of the plan that one often plays for. But okay, so somehow this was okay, and unfortunately, maybe this this whole knight a6 business. Knight a6. Knight b4 somewhere like here. So I think it was just a one move blunder. Knight c2 is bad here. No, it's more than a one move blunder. This position here is already dangerous for the light square bishop. Knight c7 might be the way, just to make sure equality. Just let the bishop come there. Take. This might have been the path to equality here. It should be okay for black. Yeah, okay. It was decided on a blunder really. It wasn't. I don't think there was anything fundamentally wrong with black's position, except for this knight to a2 idea. Okay, let's look at another game. Howell against Pert. No, I don't want to look at that. Let's look at some Howell games though. Howell games. Did I? This was fascinating. Simon Williams against David Howell. Let's have a look at this. Simon Williams against David Howell in round 4. So Simon Williams, very aggressive, creative, exciting grandmaster to watch. Likes attacking chess, interesting openings, etc. So d4, knight f6, c4. We have Queen's Indian territory. Bishop b4 check. Actually, no, this is Bogo Indian, as in Bogolojubov. Bogo Indian. Knight f3, bishop b4 check. Knight bd2, b6, g3. I think this is quite well trodden territory. Bishop g2 in the Bogo. Castles. Black played now a5. Quite often played as d5. And here, quite an unusual idea. Usually Queen C2 is played apparently 50 games, 51 games. We have Knight B1. So that's a little bit of a novelty move. Knight B1 from Simon Williams. Knight B1. Okay, so Knight B1. We have Bishop E7. So is the knight going to be better positioned on C3 or something? Rook E1. Queen C8. And a very interesting idea is played here. D5. We have E takes, C takes. Bishop takes D5. There's some sort of gambit, some sort of weird gambit is going on here. And the idea now is like sacking another pawn, it seems. E4. Maybe black can survive with something like this, but it looks a bit scary to have the knight displaced. This position looks a bit scary. Idea, knight F5. Bishop takes D5. What does black do? Takes. This looks better for... This looks interesting anyway. So yeah, black actually though took on E4, which would appear to run into a tactic based on the loose rook on potentially loose rook on A8. It would appear to have run into this tactic. Can you see what would you play tactically here? White to play tactically here. What would you do? White to play if you wanted to try and exploit black's greed in this position. And yeah, what would you play in this position? It looks as though it should be fun. Okay, yeah. So one of you got it at least. Lobster fork on stream. Okay. Okay, rook takes E4, as though there's like a fork, a standard fork here, right? But black has snatched 2 pawns, yeah, already. And unfortunately, seems to have a really annoying move here. Remember, black's already snatched 2 pawns. So he's only missing 1 pawn. He's got 7 out of the 8 pawns. It's quite a high percentage of pawns remaining. Whilst white is on 5 out of 8 pawns. Black, unfortunately, although black, this is a humorous intellectual exchange here, debate. Although black has a loose piece on A8, it seems technically you could argue that white has a loose piece on C1. And as far as loose pieces, by the way, I want to come on to another grandmaster soon, Danny Gormally, who I think excelled, gets my prize for exploitation of loose pieces, but it seems that all the other GMs are at it as well. David Howell is another loose piece killer exploiter. So who's better at exploiting loose pieces? Which grandmaster? That's an interesting competition there. But the C1 bishop, you see, once you identify a loose piece, I think I've simplified in a YouTube video once that you just look for double attacks. Actually, it's more than that. You look like mad ages until you find any resources which exploit the loose pieces. It takes deep work, effort, investigation, but there might be a way of tapping into the loose pieces here. It looks as though white's tapping into blacks, but how can black tap into white's? C1 bishop. Black to play here. Amazing move. And I'll be back in 30 seconds. Black to play here. Okay, that might be more than 30 seconds, but I'm hoping you all have some answers here. I've given you so much time. I've given you a clue about the loose piece on C1. Come on, tell me. Knight takes G3. Oh man, it does go into double attack if queen takes. There's check, double attack to win that loose piece. These loose pieces really drop off, but you've got to work hard to find these amazing resources to exploit them. And here both sides are at it tactically. So there's no time to take on A8. Black has basically got 3 whole pawns, and this position is assessed by the engines as slightly better for black. So what is this? Knight and bishop of the same colour. But black is the exchange up for, well, rook for knight and bishop. So it's like knight and bishop and rook with 3 pawns. So rook 5 plus 3 pawns 8. Knight and bishop is like 5. So basically, technically, from an accounting perspective, with the 3 pawns and the rook versus knight and bishop, black is up materially. We see C6, queen H5, D5. Okay, so we see now what seems to be a very ambitious idea to try and attack black's king here with bishop H3, queen B7, and a very ambitious idea, very direct and maybe a little bit too committal. Knight C3, you know, what is black's pawns going to kill white anytime imminently, or is black just having greater and greater central grip? Let's have a quick look at knight D7. Let's just follow this. Black gets nice central control, right? And the rook's going to come to here and maybe double, you know, neatly an E file if given a chance. It's just safe set of argument. Black's central control is on the increase because he has got these extra 2 pawns in the center, so you can imagine black's central control will be on the increase. I'm just trying to work out some sort of rationale. There's a very committal continuation here with bishop F5 threatening mate in 1, G6, and now queen H6. This looks quite lucrative, as though there's some dark square weaknesses that are being created. And knight G5 looks like a very dangerous thing now. And you might wonder, well, actually, what about taking here? No, then that's actually a forced mate in 5 because knight G5 threatening mate. If takes, there's a forced like mate here after check, bishop H6. Yes, and mate next move. So it's not advisable to take this bishop. Black instead plays rook E8, creating the possibility of bishop F8, which would unveil the queen as a potential defender on the second rank. And also, it seems, well, bishop F8 to evict the queen. We see knight G5 here, and this is actually not working so brilliantly now. Knight G5, probably another move like bishop C2 might be interesting to consider here, and maybe delicately trying to get onto the dark squares, but technically it seems black's okay. But this knight G5 very committal now, because it seems as though black has a resourceful defense here available to avoid being mated on G7 on the event of bishop takes G5, which ordinarily you'd think is suicidal, to kind of get rid of your defensive dark square bishop after you've weakened your dark squares. That doesn't sound like a good idea, weakening a colour complex, then giving up your bishop on that colour complex. If you just read that aloud, it wouldn't seem like a good idea. But here, because of the nuances of the position, the bishop on f5 is hanging here, right? So black indeed did play the forcing move. Bishop takes g5, allowing what seems to be looking a very interesting idea of just mating black on g7. But black, alas, has calculated this very well and hasn't been biased conceptually by this position, because there's a hanging bishop on f5, and he has got a fantastic resource here which does seem to win material without being mated. Can you guess, black to play in this position? What does black play in this position defensively, which appears to give black a decisive advantage, in fact? Black to play. Very tactical slugfest, this game. First the subject was loose pieces, now the subject seems to be king safety, with a specialist subject on giving up on certain colours around the king, seemingly after giving up your bishop of that colour. So this is interesting. Does black actually defend this? Well, yes, somehow, with f6. Not only, well, allowing bishop takes f6 under better circumstance, g7 is protected automatically. Both bishops are now hanging. So bishop takes, we can just do what exactly? Well, the idea here is, although there's only one bishop hanging, the idea is not, this didn't happen, the idea is not this, because then actually that's draw time. Check, check, it's draw time, because then anytime the king steps out we win the queen. That would just be a draw. No, but black has another idea. In this position, black to play here. This is really tactical stuff. And this definitely wins material without a draw, actually. This didn't happen in the game. This wins material without a draw. Just queen f7. So if this bishop moves, then we take this bishop. And if this bishop moves, then actually we can take this bishop, because we now got queen g6 against queen g5. We can play queen g6. And then what? So yeah, that can't be allowed. This can't be allowed, this queen f7. So white played, doesn't matter what white plays, it seems bad. Bishop takes g6 was played. So now if hg check, we win the rook. That would be good for white. But the rook doesn't have to be left as a loose piece, funny enough, on e8 here. After bishop takes g6, we have this check. And now, in this position, f takes g5. Oh dear. Oh dear, oh dear. White's getting munched. There's no attack. Oh man. It's a total tactical, clinical slugfest between two grandmasters, this game. I don't know about what you guys think about it. It's total, like, tactics dominate. No positional considerations are secondary. It's like when you've got hanging pieces around, and these boundaries of how you push your own king safety and what you do, it's amazing. But black is fine here, it seems. And he's also, of course, pinning this knight. But this rook was given for this final fling. Rook takes. Bishop f5. Threatening check, which would force the queen to go there. Would it? Yes, because king here check is devastating. So this first row has to be protected. It's protected. So this is not so lethal. Just king h8. here. Yeah, black's just material up. Knight f3, but the final fling with knight takes g5 would seem interesting for bishop e6 and knight g5. But now queen g7, offering c6. That's taken. And now rook f8. And here white's resigned actually. He didn't bother trying to check. Let's just try to check. Why did white resign? If check here, black is threatening things like g4 and taking. So say takes g4, knight moves somewhere. Where? Here. Queen f6. Oh dear. White's king is in trouble now. There's also a possibility of, well, although it's protected at the moment. Yeah, white's just got no bits left. If knight takes g4, then queen f3 is mate and 4. So yeah, black's got the pressure on the king now. Yeah. This is a really tactical game. Okay, so David Howell won that with black. That was an interesting game. Very tactical. And then also there was another interesting game with David Howell in round 5. A little bit on the curious side. So John M's another Grandmaster. So Grandmaster versus Grandmaster game in round 5. Shall we have a quick look at that? So John M's against David Howell. Knight f3. Let's flip the board actually. Knight f6. Symmetrical c4 g6. Knight c3 bishop g7. We have g3. d5. C takes, knight takes. So what is this called? Just the English opening of knight f6 apparently. Bishop g2, knight c6. White castles, knight b6. And this looks like a dangerous gambit idea. Now, white actually plays, I don't think this will be mentioned in live book. Nope. Silly me, it's the main move, 173 games. d4. It's offering a kind of gambit. Should it be taken? Okay, let's have a look at this position. Would you take this d pawn? Whew. You've got 3 bits on it and white's only got 2 bits on it. Why can't you take it? Yeah? Apparently players with black just castle here. Usually, and we get this kind of continuation. That's what they usually do. But David Howell is calling the bluff here. He actually took, this is only seen about 106 games apparently. He took on d4, knight takes, queen takes. And usually plays with white playing knight b5 here. And this looks a little bit on the scary side because of the pressure on the queen side here. Queen c4 say. It looks as though white has got enough compensation and he's getting a pawn back anyway. But white actually played a4. I've had this situation myself recently where I was on the verge of getting absolutely blasted from what seemed to be a positional gambit in a quiet opening in the Hearts League. I was lucky to draw it with precise moves. I mean, it's a bit scary because it doesn't feel like an e4 gambit. It's more of a positional gambit, where you're stuck with this bishop sometimes. You can't move that, and there's scrutiny on your queen side at various points, and it's very uncomfortable to be on the receiving end of this sort of position unless you really know what you're doing. So what does David Howell do here? Well, he took on d1, rook takes d1, and yes, he played what seems to be equivalent of a computer-like move, because white is threatening knight b5 here. As I say, this scrutiny on the queen side could be very unpleasant. You can't move this. So, you know, what are you going to do about c7? You know, if you play c6, that just runs into a5. This looks horrendous. For a6, it looks absolutely... You don't want to do this, because, like, this is something you just don't want to do, right? But what does black play here? It's amazing. It's amazing. It looks as though your queen side's set for huge scrutiny. So what do you do here? Black to play. Incredible. Black to play in this position. So this is kind of, you're on the receiving end of a positional gambit here. What do you do? Knight b5 is like a positional threat, right? What do you do? What would you do? Alright, one suggestion with casting. If you're casting, you're neglecting your queen side, aren't you? a5? What do you do then? a6 actually? It's horrible. And there's also knight d5 as well, potentially. No, he took out, this knight's a danger piece. He actually took out the knight. He played bishop takes c3, giving up that bishop. Wow. B takes. And he handles this threat next with a5. So he's locked down on two of the principal threats. But still, surely white's now just got the bishop pair. Bishop f4. Well, handle that. c6. Bishop c7. Okay. Handle that. Knight moves back. Is there a problem here? Bishop h3. Okay, black can't castle. So he's gone into... black seems to have gone into sort of a Terminator style meltdown. He's like regrouping using his... You seem to have cut off the Terminator's arms and legs, but unfortunately it's about to regroup because it's a new sort of Terminator, and black is regrouping here. Although it can't castle, you might think that's the end of it, but black plays what in this position? But black to play, oh, it's horrible. Oh, it's cruel. It's cruel tactics. So you can't, Terminator can't move the knight because of rook d8, checkmate. You can't castle because of bishop takes d7, right? So you think as white, this is it. This is broken. I've destroyed this machine. But black, oh, f5 is mentioned. I think f5 might actually be plausible. Actually, f5 might actually be plausible. It's the top engine choice, f5. But there's another move played. Yeah. I'm not entirely sure about e6 because that's weakening some dark squares. e6 might be okay for white just to do this. If here e5, we've got a bind at least. There's clear compensation there. No, black played rook. Another computer-looking move, rook a7. With his own threats now of b5. So he wants to use the pawn majority now. There's a 3-2 pawn majority, right? And he wants, with tempo, to hit the bishop. So rook a7's got some stuff going on for it. We see rook ab1. b5. Yes, the bishop is repulsed. Bishop f4. And black snatches this pawn on a4. So it's like David Howell's never been told any, in the last two games, any positional principles about weakening squares, having double pawns, being able to castle, this sort of stuff. It seems he's playing on the exact position, really, and saying, well, you know, well, where's the proof that my position here is busted just because all the white's pieces look active? Where's the proof? Where's the proof here? The engine actually still likes white slightly, and gives the move bishop g2 with pressure, right? Surely there's a lot of pressure that compensates. But okay, white played bishop e3, and we have, it seems as though black's getting back in the game now with c5. So maybe if he had played bishop here on c5, there's bishop c6. This might have been an interesting way of playing it, actually. Bishop g2. So precision, yeah. And if rook a6, then this, and then if castles, this should be okay, because there's still this pressure on the queen side. Look great still. But yeah, in the game we see bishop e3. It might be a slip up after c5. And we see now white's giving up the light square bishop, which I think might be a mistake. So trying to regain some of his material. But all of a sudden, you know, the Terminator is regrouping here after bishop takes d7. Trying to get back some of the bits. The Terminator's just, I don't know, got some positional trump cards now. Instead, bishop g2, you know, just trying to keep the pressure and compensation going on, might have been a safer bet. But you know, there's severe pressure on black here. Just keep black at bay. But the way it was played now is like almost like a cashing out move. Bishop takes d7, try and get pawn back. But unfortunately here, rook takes, king takes. It's like the king is a ready-made useful piece in this ending. We are simplifying into an ending now, opposite coloured bishops. So the Terminator has survived with a vengeance, it seems, with an aggressive king after king c6, saying, look, if you take this pawn, then there's rook e8 now. Oh dear. Oh my word. The Terminator is coming alive. He's regrouping. He's coming back at you. And he's got this passed a pawn, and his king's aggressive. What on earth has happened here? Black was being held back, and because of this idea of winning a pawn back, black all of a sudden seems to have trump cards in this endgame. This is a nightmare. How did black get trump cards in this endgame? If bishop takes e7, rook e8, the rook's going to come to the 7th. It's a disaster, isn't it? This is a disaster. And then black's got things like rook a2. And it's looking bad, isn't it? Oh my word. So the bishop goes here. And now things start to look really grim after bishop f5, rook a1, e5, putting the pawn away from danger. And black's going to play something like, well, it looks as though that's tempting, but also this might be really good. We'll get the king up here, believe it or not. King f1, king b5. The king is marching up here. Rook c8, bishop e2, king c4. Now if rook takes a4, king b3, winning material. You know, here, king b3 wins material, right? Oh man, what has happened here? Black was nearly dead, yeah? And all white did, his sin, was to try and get a pawn back. And he's in this horrible endgame now, with the king marching at him. King d2. f6. Bishops. This bishop's better than this one. King c1, king b5, dropping back. What's going on here? Why didn't the king go there? Well, I think if the king goes in there, it just gets repelled back, doesn't it? Check. So no, the king doesn't want to go there just yet. King b5, f3, h5. So there's no g4 later, it's discouraged. King d2, check. King c4. Now the king is going back now again. Here, bishop a3. The problem here is how to defend against king b3. If rook a3, then rook d1. White's getting tied up in knots because then there's all sorts of nasty things going on here. Yeah, it's like white's getting tied up in knots there. So we see bishop a3, rook d7, bishop f8, and now bishop c2 protecting that pawn, h4, and now king b3. Oh man, this bishop and rook are trying to desperately stop a3 now. Okay, rook a3, check, king b2. So all black needs to do now is like, well, what about c3? What about just going for c3? We see c4, rook c7, king d2, and now bishop b3. Sick. And yeah, white is just dead lost here, it seems. So he can't, his rook is stranded. His bishop can't move away from the rook. If he plays c5, he loses the rook. Yeah. So what does white actually do here? It's lost. He resigned here. His rook's been strangled on a3. So if you're ever playing David Howell, the lesson from this game is try and keep the pressure up. Don't cash out. Oh my word. Because you've got to watch out for these emerging trump cards in the endgame. Even if it's opposite coloured bishops, that's not going to save you. Like here, it's just... Do you agree that white's totally lost? Because the rook, look at the king. It's pretty evident, isn't it? White's totally toast. If you want a concrete thing, e3, let's follow this, rook c8. Yeah, rook takes c4, start munching. Rook b4, it's possible then, that would be the killer blow. That would be the killer blow. Ouch. Yeah. The king's just so aggressive. Yeah. Okay, there's your evidence. Concrete evidence that the king is going to be munching soon. So yeah, I thought that was an interesting game. But these two games of David Howell, it looks as though he was playing like a computer, wasn't he? No, I'm not saying he used the computer. He's always been playing like this, yeah, since about 7, so before computers. So I mean, it's just this style of play. It's just sometimes. So very technical, you could say. Yeah. So okay, so David Howell there in round 5, but Gormally played some interesting games as well that I want to draw your attention to. Let's have a look at one particularly interesting game I found of Gormally. I found this tickled me a bit. This game, it was against Chris Ward, another grandmaster. Chris Ward, and actually it's more than 30 moves, but it was interesting, so I'm going to show you it. Especially since the internet hasn't collapsed yet for some reason. I don't know why. I don't know. BT have been working on stuff. I have no idea about the consistency of my internet connection. But last week it was like a nightmare. So we carry on at the moment. So Christopher Ward against Daniel Gormally in round 5. I found this particularly fascinating. d4, knight f6, c4, e6, knight c3. So we have a Nimzo engine, and the f3 line In live, this is the 4th most popular move to play f3. Doesn't go crazy here trying to exploit the dark squares. He actually just plays what a sensible looking move. I mean, I usually play c5 here. I mean, that's my mistake. But d5 is actually the more popular. It seems as though logically, you know, white's weaken the dark squares. Why don't you want to do some damage on the dark squares? But d5 is the more popular. Just keeping a grip on the e4 square. We have a3, bishop e7. And now white plays e4, and it's here the black shows he's just delayed a dark square attack, because he plays d takes, f takes, and now hits the dark squares with a really aggressive move, a violent looking move, e5. This pawn sacrifice shouldn't be accepted. If d takes, I think black should be more than fine. In a practical sense, at least, this position would be easier for black to play, surely. Black might even be casting queenside later. So no, white plays d5, black castles, knight f3, bishop g4, because you want to like take off this to weaken white on the dark squares a bit more, potentially. Bishop e2, stopping white. Hi. Yeah, just as I was talking about it going so well, I thought either the engine crashed or maybe it was the internet that stopped for a moment. Oh dear. Oh man. I've stopped streaming on Play Chess here. I'll say please can you see hi, do you see the move h6 on the board? Is h6 on board? And if I play bishop e3, is bishop e3 now? Oh, it lasted quite a way today. I thought it's been behaving itself today. So bishop takes, queen takes. Do you see this position now with b5? Oh dear. Sorry. Sorry, black played a brilliant move here. Oh, okay. Black played an absolutely brilliant move. Okay, let's make this the last game. Should I just show you the rest of the game? I'll show you the rest of the game. I think I want to play a Blitz tournament soon, somewhere. So b5, brilliant move, because after c takes, what does black play here? Black plays knight takes d5. Wow. Knight takes d5. So this is better for black, I think, if takes check, win this knight. Yes. So the game continues. Queen f2. Knight b6. Took. C takes. And black's got a nice bishop. Nice knight versus bishop scenario. Very comfortable for black now. He wants to secure that knight a bit more, maybe soon. Rook d5. He puts it on d4, a square to torture white. Rook f1, knight d4. Queen G3. That's protected. Bishop G4. But look at this knight, fantastic, absolutely. We'll just play through the end of the game, and that's it for this week. Yeah. So pair of rooks came off. But yeah, black's just positionally, he's positionally basically outplayed white. Rook C1, Queen F7, A4, Queen A2, very annoying move, Queen A2, wow, it's like blimey. Queen C3, snatching a pawn, so these pawns actually become doubled. Queen C7, Rook F8, Queen takes, but has white got a dangerous pawn? Well, instead of taking here, I think that's kind of a mistake actually. Black played Queen B3, so threatening. Check. Rook A1. Check. He takes this centre pawn instead. Check. Queen E6. Hitting the rook. Knight takes. Protecting. Queen takes. Rook D8, as though, yeah, Rook D2 to mate. Queen C6. Queen E2, threatening mate again. H3. Rook D4 now. B6. Only 2 squares away. Queen takes B2. Rook takes. Check. Now Queen F2, so he's really going for an attack on the king, letting this pawn reach quite a dangerous place. Queen F3. Check. Rook F1. Queen D3 check. F5. Yeah, this king's not there, it's pinned. But the king's in trouble because of Queen F2. Forget that. Rook takes E5. Check. Check. And this is the final like tactical point. Black to play and win here. Black to play and win. Can you see what black does in this position? The radio shows that, yeah, Tuesday 9 o'clock London time, 9 PM usually, or 9:05, because I like to watch Holby City sometimes. At the end of the Holby City, it gets super dramatic. Like, I like to watch that sometimes. So sometimes I'm a few minutes late. So black to play here and win. Yeah, plays the check. Ouch. Queen takes. Is on the rook. No time for B7. And now F4 is letting this B7 happen because F3 is so dangerous. Rook F5. King G6 is going to play F3. Check. And now Queen B4, and here white resigned. So anyway, I thought that was an amazing loose piece tactic early on in the game. That's why I wanted to show you that one. So okay, I hope you got something from it. This broadcast, we had a good hour at least, didn't we? Was it a good hour to start off with? Yeah. Right. So see you next week. Yeah. Thanks.